VHS in your house I ever bought, so that's why I went with it. See Earl Hebner there, the referee. Of course, you got the traditional red, white, and blue ropes. Probably another, iconic part of all this. As we see Sid's like, he did used to wear like a vest jacket, but I don't know why he didn't come out in it on this one. But I think for Sid, he's a big guy. They might have built him as 6'9", something like that. I think he was more in the sort of 6'7", 6'8" category, but still massive. He's a unit, and he definitely had the look of a champion. I never really bought him as a babyface, I'll be honest, but I think as this role he's at now, this is like pretty good for him. He's one of those guys as well that when in WCW, he didn't. Every time he kept going back there, like, because obviously he had that stint with WWF before, and then went back to WCW, and he did do some stuff, but he was never, for some reason, and it's odd because normally Vince, when he gets guys back from WCW, he doesn't normally want to do too much with them, i.e. Vader, but Sid, for some reason, he was liked by Vince McMahon, and I think he was liked just because of the sheer size of him. He, in many ways, and it's an odd comparison because they are very, very unalike, but in many ways he's the sort of Brock Lesnar, if you will, of this era. He really is. I don't think he had the sort of protection that Brock has had, but I do think that he was built very much the same way, that this is a guy you don't mess with, and he was that was his role back then. But I and I love that as well. See, this was the fun thing about Sid. He was in between, because for me he was like nor babyface nor heel, and that's what made him cool, because he never really came out and slagged off the fans, it was hard to not like him, because if he'd done the work in the ring, you'd have to respect it. However, if he didn't like you, he'd tell you. But he always used to come out and do the whole fist bumps with everyone, which I always found quite fascinating. So it was an interesting dynamic that he played. I think the chemistry here we see between Bret and Sid is an interesting one as well, because it's not something I think you'd go out lightly and book this. See Sid there chucking him straight over the top of the ropes. Everyone, of course, always asks me about the whole blue mat thing, like, what was all that about, but I never really thought too much of it. Well, there you go, Sid's removing that anyway, so I love it. Like, it's crazy how close those fans are. You just wouldn't get that now. Like, it looks like an ECW type setup. It's so close. Those fans are like so close to the ring. Today, you'd be about at least another 2 meters, maybe 1 meter away. I don't know, 1.5 meters away from where they are now. And they look really close. It looks better. If I was a fan back then, I think I would have liked the whole live experience just a little bit more. As an adult, I really kind of wish I had that experience to be living an adult in this era, just because when you go to live shows now, it's so difficult to not get some smart ass behind you just who's going to basically tell you everything and give you his opinion all the way through, and just watch it as a critic rather than a fan. But even though there are adults that I'm sure they weren't stupid, but I think they still back here that it was just a different kind of culture to go into a wrestling show. fascinating there. MB Karate Fighters, check that out. That's the sponsor, and they used to have these balloon things going around, the blimp balloons going around at the shows as well. But Karate Fighters of all people, I wonder what WWF used to make from that deal by having them on. It's fascinating. Some of the odd sponsors that you used to get back then, it really was an odd time for WWF. Definitely weren't doing well in the ratings. Pretty cool there, pretty neat. Bret just working on, big parts of Sid, body parts, trying to take him apart, take him down. That was one of the cool things about Bret, and probably why I, liked him early on, is that he just, with his matches, it was more scientific. It was more realistic to the fact that he would work on a body part and, line it up for the sharpshooter or whatever. Like there was logic behind it. But as I said before, I don't even remember this. I don't remember coming out of this even as a kid thinking this was epic. But I certainly, I remember liking it. Let's put it that way. More. See, I think this kind of thing now, where you see that and he's working the way he is, like, I know for some fans, you're probably watching this and thinking, God, this is boring. But for me, the fact that he's using the same moves like 3 or 4 times over, you just, there's something like in a rule book now where guys just don't tend to do that as much. Like, they'd be like, no, you can't do that too many times. You've got to move on to something else and, tell it a different way. I like here that it's coming across a lot more slower, methodical pace, but still making more sense. Surprised, how much Bret's been in control, this part of the match. I mean, he really has got it going on. So, just to let you know exactly the year we're at here, is Bret's removing, going to expose the turnbuckle there. This show happened from West Palm Beach, Florida, December 15th, 1996. So, quite some time ago now, I'll tell you. I really don't remember that bit, and yet I probably would have watched this tape about 30, 40 times over. I mean, that's how obsessed I used to be with wrestling. Once I used to buy a tape, I would literally sit down, no matter how bad some of the matches could be, I'd still sit and watch the whole thing through. Time after time after time after just buying. I just used to watch it constantly. And each time I would always find something like new or something that I missed before. The attire there that Bret's wearing, I mean, that's probably, I would say, one of the most iconic that he had on. That's probably the one he's remembered. Now, of course, Bret, this leads all into WrestleMania 13, so we know where Bret's going to end up going here. He's going to end up facing Austin because he's not getting Michaels. But the big change and the big problem becomes when Shawn Michaels wins the belt back from the Royal Rumble, and then they have to really mess around with the main event, and the whole Royal Rumble winner and everything else, that just gets thrown out the window. And so the way this ends up going is Sid basically goes in as the champion up against the Undertaker, and people kind of grunt and moan about that match. Again, it's just one of those things. You've got two big guys, and they just didn't really. It wasn't the classic mashup of styles. I mean, it just did not click. Big boot there by Sid. One of the things about Sid, and I don't know if he does it in this, he's going to do it in this match, but he used to be able to do the nip up, which, you look at him, you think no chance. But he used to be able to do it. He done it in the match with Michaels at MSG a month before this, whilst Michaels had him on a kind of a scissor kick on the floor, and it was really impressive. So he definitely was very agile, Sid. But I think he could have done a lot more. But then, I mean, you look how it all ended up for him when he did take a big risk, and oh man, devastating from WCW with the injury. But what I like about him here, and I wish guys of today would, go back and watch Sid, the big guys of today, especially Braun Strowman, guys like that, he knew how to use his mass. Like a guy that big, you don't want to be doing, fast pace, high risk moves. You're a big guy, you need to sell that. And the good thing about Sid was he really did know his own body and where his strength was, and do you know what I mean? He played to that, and I think that he learned that very, very early on. Probably the first time round in WWF, the way Vince probably would have promoted him against Hulk Hogan. And here we go, we see an attack here from Steve Austin. And again, this is a time where Steve Austin has been built as pretty much the heel. And there we see Davey and Owen coming out, obviously there with the Hart Foundation. Dave Hebner there. Pat Patterson. That was always their kind of job back then. They'd always come out and just, mind you, it's probably more realistic than it is today sometimes. So notice now Bret's selling the leg because Austin, pretty much chopped him down on it. Sid's got this big dilemma what to do. But I like that. It wasn't like a typical heel move to go running in. And this is what made Sid extra sort of very versatile, very dynamic, that you didn't know quite what he was. Shawn Michaels there, you see him trying to get off the seat. There you go, Sid. He's made his mind up. But I like the fact that he paused, because it gives fans a bit of time for it to sink in, and then you go to the next bit. That's really good storytelling. Today, it would probably happen within about 5 seconds, this. But back then, the whole thing would be you wait for the reaction, you get the fans up, you get that indecisiveness, and then you make the decision. And, it's just another piece of the build. Worth pointing out as well, Sid's finisher was the powerbomb, but it was the powerbomb style I liked. I mean, Dave Batista, he had, of course, the Batista bomb, which he used to go down with his opponent on his backside and roll backwards and then get up. And I always thought that looked a bit clunky. I don't know why, I just never really liked it. But the way Sid, I don't really know why somebody hasn't picked it up more, or why it gets used as such a crappy little move if they do, because you've got basically the Last Ride, which is kind of like it, but the way Sid would do that, I mean, I can't remember if we're actually going to see it in this match. I hope we do. But man, he's from what I remember, and I could be wrong by the way, but from what I can remember, it was an intense powerbomb. That was it, game over. And this was a time as well, and I know I'll probably harp on about this like I'm criticising the present, but This is only because for me this is like gold. This is nostalgia for me. But big chokes.